The first photo was taken at the simple resort in Kumrat Valley, where I had expected to spend the night without any problems. After the long ride over the Badogai Pass, that had been the plan, to finally stop, rest, and enjoy the valley. But as I mentioned in the previous video, things didn't turn out that way. The police were convinced that my visa was about to expire. The document they were looking at showed the 90-day entry window, and they interpreted that as the duration of my stay. In addition to that, they considered Kumrat Valley to be a restricted area. So instead of staying the night, I was asked to leave. That same night, I was escorted out. We rode for hours through the mountains, long after dark, until around 3 in the morning, when we finally stopped at a resort along the highway. By that point, there wasn't much left to do except get a few hours of sleep. The next morning, the situation continued. As I reached the exit of the resort, there was already a police escort waiting for me, and from that point on, I wasn't traveling alone. Throughout the day, as I moved from one district to another, the escort would change. At each boundary, one group of officers would hand me over to the next. There was no discussion about it. It was simply how things were being handled. The ride itself was long, but not particularly difficult. What stood out was the constant presence of the escort. It changes the feeling of travel. Normally, when you ride, you stop when you want, take a break, look around, decide your pace. Here, that wasn't really the case. You keep moving, you follow. At the same time, everything remained calm. There was no sense of aggression, no confrontation, just a clear intention to move me out of the region. By the time I reached the border of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the escort ended. At that point, I was on my own again. I looked for a place to stay nearby but couldn't find anything suitable, so I made the decision to continue riding, all the way back to Islamabad. It was a long day. By the time I arrived in the early evening, I was tired, but also relieved to finally be out of the situation. The next step was to clarify what had actually happened, so the following day, I went to the Ministry of the Interior. There, the situation became clear very quickly. My visa was valid for 90 days from the date of entry. There had been no problem. However, the officer suggested that, to avoid any further issues, I should go to another office, the place where visas are issued and approved, and apply for a new one, just to make everything absolutely clear. So I went. The process wasn't simple. I had to apply online, provide documents, upload information. It took time and it wasn't entirely straightforward, but I had help. A young man working at the hotel stepped in and guided me through the process, helping me get everything submitted correctly. Without that help, it would have taken much longer. And by the second night, the new visa was approved. Another 90 days. No questions, no issues. Just like that, the situation was resolved. Looking back, it was one of those experiences that you don't plan for. A combination of misunderstanding, local regulations, and the realities of traveling in more remote regions. At no point did things feel dangerous, but they did feel uncertain, and that's often the more challenging part. In the end, what started as a ride into one of the most beautiful valleys in northern Pakistan turned into something quite different. A journey across the region under police escort, and a reminder that travel doesn't always go the way you expect, but that's part of it. And once it was resolved, the journey could continue,